The following is a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.
Crossed Flags, a racing podcast. It's your midweek fix for racing news and information. Brought to you by the Championship Racing Network. Now let's head trackside to join your hosts, Steve West and Matt Nicholson.
Podcast number 2 of the new year. Welcome into it. I'm Steve West. This is Matt Nicholson. Kerry Adams, very, very capably producing. We appreciate him very much. We're going to deal with a couple of smaller stories here before we get into the main topic. So this is going to be overloaded with one particular bit of news about the Daytona 500 because it's baffling to us.
That's an understatement.
Truly, honestly baffling to us. And probably when we read you the statement, you'll realize exactly why we're baffled, because the statement given just seems to, make no sense whatsoever. It does, from his point of view. I understand where the driver is coming from, but the whole thing makes no sense in the grand scheme of things. But we're getting ready to get into the 2025 broadcasting year. And we're finalizing things like the announcing crews for these different networks. And CW Sports is, let's face it, pretty new in the whole grand scheme of things. So we were kind of curious as to what was going to happen, because for the 8 races they ran last year, they used the entirety of NBC Sports. Their Xfinity Series announcing crew, the production crew, the camera guys, everything. It was all NBC Sports. Now they're kind of, I think, using the cameras and stuff that Fox and or NBC will use throughout the course of the year.
I think so, yeah.
But their announcing crew really is kind of theirs. And so they announced it. They made it official as of yesterday, as we record this particular tape. I know it's old school broadcasting thing. As we record this podcast here on Wednesday, the 15th, yesterday, CW came out and said, here's our broadcast crew. And the main announcer, he's a good one. It's Adam Alexander. They got Adam Alexander from Fox Sports. So far, so good?
So far.
Okay. The 2 other guys that they got are also broadcast veterans and NasCar veterans. They have been pretty much all over the place. Mm-hmm. See him right there. One just retired from the Xfinity Series, so he really knows. He was up with the latest stuff going on there. The guy on the bottom here with the sunglasses, that's Parker Kligerman, who has experience with NBC Sports. Guy on the top there you might recognize as Jamie McMurray. He's got a couple of pretty big wins to his credit in the Cup Series. How much he knows about the Xfinity Series, that's a pretty good question.
Overall, in general, they got that right for a driver analyst.
Yeah.
They got it right.
Yeah. I think these 3 are going to be a good trio. I don't have a problem with this. Down along pit road, Dylan Welsh, Kim Kuhn. I'm all right with that.
I can live with Dylan Welch. Kim Kuhn needs to get a little bit better in some aspects, but Dylan's really good.
This is her opportunity to continue to get her feet wetter and wetter, because she's done it before. And there are times when she's really good, and there are times when she seems to be a little bit over her head.
True.
But yeah, you're right. Dylan Welsh, nothing but a pro. Happy to have him on board. And I'm sure CW is too, because let's face it, you get this kind of a crew together here with the 2 people that we just talked about on pit road. Mm-hmm. They should really have zero problems whatsoever in making a nice, smooth transition into picking up NASCAR coverage. They've gotten into college football. They're doing basketball. They got that deal with, the ACC? Mm-hmm. I've been doing Live Golf now for a year or so. So they're doing this fledgling sports network thing, and it's picking up some steam. Now, that being said, Fox has changing things up. Because, yes, they still have the first 14 races of the Cup Series season for NASCAR, but they also picked up the Indycar Series. And all of those races are going to be on the Fox network, whereas only 4 of the 10 Cup Series races that they've got are going to end up on the main network. That's another complaint for another time that we've already dealt with. Not even going to go there. Well, with Lee Diffie kind of sticking with NBC, and he was the main IndyCar announcer for them, Lee Diffie not going anywhere, Fox needed a new guy. Will Buxton.
I'm a little intrigued by this one. a little intrigued that they were able to snatch him from Sky Sports and Formula One, of all places. I was thinking that they were going to have somebody of the caliber of Vince Welch or Alan Bestwick.
And Alan Bestwick would have been a good one.
Alan would have been a good one. That IMS track PA announcer money must be really good for him to not leave that.
Well, and I think he's still got a contract with ABC ESPN, I think.
I know he does stuff with the Yukon Women's Sports.
Yeah. So
I don't know.
I'm not exactly sure what his deal is. It might not have been good enough. Maybe they just decided that Will Buxton, with his open wheel experience that he has when it comes to Formula One, could bring something different in. I don't know. I'm not really sure I got a problem with it. I don't. I'll be real honest with you. What I've heard of Will Buxton, I think he's good. I don't have a problem with that. He is going to have to make the transition, though, so it's going to be real interesting to see exactly how much he relies on his F1 experience and starts to make references to it, because that's going to be the trick. If you're watching an IndyCar race, yeah, F1 is a cousin, but how much of it do you really want to hear? You're trying to concentrate on the IndyCar race.
That's true. Very, very true.
Does have 2 IndyCar veterans as color commentators for him, so congratulations to both Townsend Bell, who is a veteran there, and James Hinchcliffe. Hinch has done quite a bit of TV over the last couple of years as well. That shouldn't be any problem. They should make the transition for Will Buxton smoother if he is willing to listen to them.
Right.
That's a key.
They should.
All right, so there's a couple of the announcing crews set up. Fox has already announced what's going to be happening, and really not much of a change when it comes to things going on the Cup Series side. So you're still going to have Mike Joy up there. You're still going to have totally lost it.
Boyer.
Yeah, thank you. Clint Boyer and Kevin Harvick going to be with him. So yeah, no problems there. We'll deal with the rest of them as they come along and as we need to. Now we get into the part where the words, "this comes as a total shock." Oh, that's an understatement, I bet. As we got into the new year, our first big show of the year, we started running down, and we did it also last week right here on this show, on this podcast, talking about how some of the seats within the Daytona 500 are being filled. Elio Castroneves being the big one. He's got that OEP that came out later in the week, and that means that he's in. Okay. We debated that for quite a while last Saturday. If you want to and you haven't seen it yet, go on to CRN Live on YouTube and look up last week's Championship Racing Network Big Show. Okay? Either way, Elio Castroneves is in. We know that.
Yep.
We noted that MBM Motorsports, owned by NASCAR veteran owner and at one point in time driver Carl Long, was going to go with another veteran guy. And this actually impressed him when the news came out that Carl Long had tabbed Mike Wallace to come in and take over the number 66 car. And you actually about doubled his chances on a rating of 1 to 10. Before Mike Wallace had been announced, you said his chances of making the field were about a 3 out of 10, if I remember right. Mm-hmm. With Mike Wallace behind the wheel, you upped it to about a 6. Mm-hmm. And that didn't even change when Elio Castroneves was announced.
Correct.
Okay. Now here we get this. This week, NASCAR citing what they called, quote, recent racing inactivity. Now understand, I'm reading this directly off of reports, okay? NASCAR cited recent racing activity and performance as the driving factors behind the decision to not allow Mike Wallace to race, despite the fact that Mike Wallace has over 800 starts across NASCAR's top 3 series, Trucks, Xfinity, and Cup as we know them now. 197 of them, just shy of 200 of them coming in the Cup Series. 8 starts in the Daytona 500. Mm-hmm. Note that he has not competed at the larger oval tracks, intermediate and up, Daytona, Talladega are at the top of that list, in a decade. Quote, due to this inactivity at this time, he is not approved to race at the NASCAR Cup Series level. The series added that he has not requested approval for competing in the Truck or Xfinity Series. Mike Wallace is 65, and yes, the last time he raced at the Cup Series level, 2015. When was the last time he got into a NASCAR sanctioned race?
2021.
2021. Okay. Wallace comes back with this, and this is when we'll pick it up from there. Wallace says that in a Facebook post, quote, Daytona 500 update or non-update.
I've got the quote, actual quote right here from his page.
Yeah. Quote, to my utter shock and devastation, at 4 p.m. today, NASCAR competition director Elton Sawyer called to inform me that NASCAR has decided not only to not approve me for the Daytona 500, but at this time not approve me to race in the Cup, Xfinity, and Truck Series in 2025, but could go through their process to possibly get approved for 2026. This comes as a total shock, as the president of NASCAR just last week, in a real phone call, told me that I was good and he'll see me in Daytona. He thanked the fans after that, and he also noted that in there were sponsors that had come in to Carl Long and MBM Motorsports specifically because Mike Wallace had signed on to be the driver of the car.
I'm going to add something to that.
By all means.
In that same post at the bottom, he said, I also went to CMS, Charlotte Motor Speedway, as required by NASCAR, took the required drug test, basic physical, eye test, impact concussion test, and even allowed them to scan my mouth for the volunteer mouthpiece to gather driver data and paid the $160 in fees. So I owe this posting all to my fans and non-fans who were so supportive through the great messages and postings of support as they say I inspired them.
Okay. God, where to start? All right, I'm going to start right here.
Well, I could start anyway. I could start quick.
Yeah. So the president of NASCAR, the France family, Jim France, calls him up. Hey, can't wait to see you in Daytona. Good. Elton Sawyer, from the way that I'm getting it, was not the person to call Mike Wallace and tell him he's not going to be able to race in the Daytona 500. I don't know how he found out about it.
It was Elton.
It was Elton?
Yeah, it was Elton.
Okay.
All right.
Here's my problem with this. Correct me if I'm wrong. Elton Sawyer, former NASCAR driver, and Mike Wallace raced against each other
For many years.
Elton Sawyer knows what Mike Wallace is indeed capable of.
Indeed.
Almost 200 starts at the Cup level. 8 starts in the Daytona 500. Versus we're going to give a provisional to a guy who has never been on the full oval at Daytona in a 40 or 41 car field, in a stock car. And we're going to allow him to do that based upon one ARCA Menard Series start, which is going to happen just a couple of days before the Daytona 500 actually happens.
The day before. Apparently, he's already cleared because he competed and he participated in the test that was last week. Mike Wallace is a multi-time winner at Daytona. Busch Series, Nationwide,
Xfinity, whatever you want to title it, sure.
Multi-time winner at Daytona. I personally witnessed him take his last NASCAR Series victory at Talladega in a Kevin Harvick Incorporated truck. So he knows how to race super speedway. Point one, if the president of the series, I'm going to say Steve Phelps and Jim France together. Let's say one or the other.
All right.
Somebody that's right there at the top says, hey, everything's good. You took care of what you need to get took care of. See you down there. Since when does O'Donnell and Elton Sawyer and those people overrule them? That's my question. Since when does that overrule come there? 2, the reason that he's been out of competition for the duration of time that he's been in is because of a family matter with his late wife had cancer and was battling cancer. He was caring for her. So we're going to hold that against him, and he's wanting to get back into the sport and doing what he knows has done all of his life. We're holding that against him. Come on now. Come on. 3, point he had. We're letting someone have a guaranteed spot that has never sat in one of the Cup Series cars in a competitive form.
And we're going to let him do it based upon, again, one competitive start in an ARCA Menard Series race the day before.
There's another kicker that I found to this twist last night. Elio is going to get a refresher test, the way I understood it, by himself at Talladega.
Fine. You're by yourself.
You're by yourself. But
I did fantastic by myself when we did the driving experience. It was
I can do
wonderful.
great by myself.
It was amazing. I had a great time, was right up against the chip on that car. And granted, the chip limited me to about 150 miles an hour, but still, I was fine. I was smooth, ready to go. No problem. All by myself. But as I was driving around that track, and yes, your mind does tend to start to think about things, even though you're doing 150 miles an hour on 33-degree banking. And what my mind started to debate and think about was to try to imagine having a whole bunch of other Cup Series cars around me. In other words, trying to put myself in the middle of a 40-ish car pack with cars below me, with cars above me, cars in front of me, and cars behind me. And then you suddenly start to get a whole brand new respect for things.
And then you can get the sense of what it feels like when you're hearing in your ear, 3 wide middle, and your rectal cavity is drawing up tighter than you know what.
Yeah.
Going like, uh-oh.
And those guys are doing a heck of a lot faster than my 150 by a factor of about 40 miles an hour, if not more.
I can't understand that, of how you can deem disqualified because of lack of competition. Well, multi-time super speedway winner. He's 800 800 National Series starts, multi-times in the Daytona 500, but he's disqualified from lack of competition because he's not been in a car taking care of his late wife that passed away. Give me a break.
And it is interesting to note what he just said, because it is a very good point. You get the president of NasCar, the France family, a member of the founding family of this series, who comes out and says, I'm looking forward to seeing you at Daytona. And then just within hours, for all intents and purposes, within a couple of days, Elton Sawyer, who just happens to be the head of racing competition or whatever the heck his title truly is over the Cup Series, is allowed to overrule him? Since when is a member of the France family overruled by somebody that they employ? God knows I can't walk into the office of Jim France and try and overrule him. I get laughed out of the office and probably tossed out of the building. But yet somehow Elton Sawyer can somehow overrule Jim France.
Or Steve Phelps, for that matter.
Or Steve Phelps. Yeah, sure. We can go with that too.
It goes to show, and I'm just going to say it for what it's worth, it goes to show that there is a level of in communication, and a level of incompetence. Here's what I mean by that. President tells him he's good to go, everything's took care of, but you get the wing of O'Donnell and Sawyer. No, you're disqualified because of lack of competition. No. No.
Disagree with that wholeheartedly.
All right. Secondly, the incompetence. Do you think for 1 second, even a split millisecond, if Elton Sawyer went to the wall and said, "Hey, I'm gonna get the helmet off and dust it off," do you think for 1 millisecond that they're gonna say, "Oh, Elton, you're disqualified due to lack of competition"? No. He'll probably, more than likely, he'd be in a seat, getting a seat fitted tomorrow.
And he'd happily clear himself.
There's not a system of checks and balances. One can do one thing over the other, and it's spelling out there's a level of incompetence there because we're not comprehending each respective situation. We're disqualifying somebody that's been in 8 Daytona 500s, won 3 National Series events at Daytona, multiple-time winner at Talladega. Let's not forget the ARCA races that he's won at Daytona and Talladega too. It's not adding up.
No.
Not adding up.
This right here makes no sense whatsoever. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Helio Castroneves. I understand his resume, and it's a very impressive one in IndyCar.
But that should not guarantee you an automatic start in Daytona 500 over somebody that has 800 series starts, and he's been out for a few years because he's been taking care of his sick spouse.
Yeah. Helio Castroneves' resume in IndyCar is impeccable. The only thing he's missing is a championship, and he's got a couple of second-place finishes and final points. I get his ability to wheel a race car, and I get the whole provisional with the quote-unquote world-class driver aspect of it. I get it. Fully understand that. You want to make sure that Helio Castroneves is going to run this race and try and draw in some IndyCar fans to NASCAR? Okay, bring it. That's fine. If that's what you really want to do, good. Knock yourself out. But when you get a guy who has this many years of experience, that many starts under his belt, that many wins at tracks like Daytona, in other words, like he just said, Talladega, twin tracks for all intents and purposes. Not exactly the same, but they drive quite similar in a lot of ways. And with the success that he's had in the top 3 levels of NASCAR and in ARCA, at the Daytonas, at the Talladegas, you can't tell me that he lost that while caring for his wife that badly. I'm sorry, not that badly. We can sit here also, and I hate to do this, but I am going to, in the end, throw Carl Long a little bit under the bus. Do you honestly believe that MBM Motorsports' number 66 car has a legitimate chance to sit up front and stay up front all day? I'm not really certain that I can, even with Mike Wallace. I'm not really certain I can go that far. Because so far I have not seen that. Now, Mike Wallace can do really, really good things with his veteran experience and knowing what he needs to do at a Daytona and Talladega. And if the car's got enough power, he can probably stick in that draft. But we have seen this on more than one occasion where cars like Carl Long's at MBM Motorsports and other teams, he's not the only one, just don't have the car to even stick with the draft.
So, if I understood it correctly, supposedly Doug Yates was going to get them a motor lease to have good horsepower.
That's a good start.
Supposedly they were going to.
That's a good start. I'll give him that.
But this just overall, there's no validity to this. None.
This makes 0 sense.
None.
And the fact that we don't have everybody that does anywhere near the equivalent of what we're doing right now, whether it's a podcast, whether they're on Sirius XM Satellite Radio's NASCAR channel, if NASCAR Race Hub was still around, which is still a major mess up by Fox Sports, in my opinion. All of these pundits from MRN, PRN, Sirius XM Satellite Radio, us, every other podcast and radio show on the planet should be screaming bloody murder over this right here. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, until Elton Sawyer gets overruled by the person who should be in charge. And again, that's Jim France, the guy who called up and told Mike Wallace, that he was going to be seen and can't wait to see you at Daytona.
I called it wrong as a refresher test.
Oh, okay.
It's called a familiarization test.
Okay, call it what you want.
If you're giving, I'm going to say it like this. If the man's went through all of his drug testing, concussion testing,
paid the money,
paid the money, everything else,
I mean, was willing to go out there and put in a mouthpiece that gave you all the information you were ever hoping to get from these drivers.
If you are going to give Elio a familiarization test at Talladega with the car,
give one to him.
Pick up the phone, you tell Carl Long, and you tell Mike, load the car up, come down, run with him.
Absolutely.
Run with him.
Or heck, since you're going to let Elio run it all by himself, let Mike run it all by himself.
Run with him.
But yeah, put the two of them together.
Let him get back.
Absolutely.
Let him get back out there, familiarize himself with everything. Boom. That's it.
And then at the same token, why aren't you giving Mike the same possibility that you're giving Elio? You're allowing Elio to run the ARCA Menards Series race on Saturday. You can't tell me that there's not an ARCA Menards team out there that wouldn't be willing to put Mike in a car.
I would snatch him up in a minute. In a minute. If I'm Bill Ventur, I'm just going to throw a name out there. If I'm Bill Venturini, picking up the phone, Mike, I heard about your situation. I'm putting you in this car. Come on out here and run.
Show NasCar I have the ability. Instead, according to what Mike says, he's not even cleared to race for the entirety of this year. He's got to wait until 2026. Why? Why are we waiting an entire year to put this guy back in a car?
He's got to get in a car to be able to be possibly considered for it. Give me a break.
Yeah. This is that little conundrum here of I need somebody with experience. Well, how am I going to get experience if I can't get the job? Can't get experience without the job, but you can't get the job without experience. Okay, boom, catch 22.
Unreal.
Problem is this guy's got the experience. I don't care whether it's been 4 or 5 years since he's been in a car or truck, for that matter.
It's a matter of, Mom, Dad, I need $3.5 million to go buy this seat, to go get this Cup ride. Uncle Joe, I need $5 million to get this car for the year. Aunt Dolly, I need this money. Give me a break.
Yeah,
we'll take a check, and somebody that has no business being inside of the wall in the yellow line at Daytona or Talladega that cannot even hold a candle, but yet we're shutting him out? Mm-mm. Give me a break.
If I'm Jim France, and I'm calling for it right now, right here, and I don't know whether Jim France watches this or ever hears about it, but gosh, I hope he does. If he hasn't heard about this podcast, I hope he hears about this right now. I'm challenging Jim France to go and overrule Elton Sawyer, because there is no reason for Elton Sawyer to say, nope, sorry, can't approve you. There is an avenue. It's the same exact avenue that Helio Castroneves is running. It's the same avenue that I've seen before. I was there when Joey Logano got the chance to get into a NASCAR Cup Series ride at Talladega, because why? He started the ARCA Menards Series race earlier that weekend. I was there. You want to know how much I was there? I interviewed Joey Logano in Victory Lane for a small little radio station out in Talladega. That's how I know that avenue is there. It's been used by many drivers, many times over many years. But again, according to Mike Wallace, and I'm taking him at his word, because I have never heard a word out of Mike Wallace that says that he would lie about this, that he won't be eligible to race in NASCAR until 2026. We're January of 2025. And this, again, is a guy with 800 career starts across the top series of NASCAR, not to mention his number of ARCA Menards Series race starts, which probably puts him, what, somewhere in the range of 950 to 1,000?
At least.
And you're disqualifying him for an entire year? So I'm laying down the gauntlet right here. I'm laying down the challenge to Jim France. You need to go down the hallway to Elton Sawyer and whoever else made this decision and go, I'm the big man on campus. I'm the BMOC. You don't overrule me. I'm the final say. And I say Mike Wallace is in, because this helps Carl Long. Carl Long is a small, one-car, little, very few employees team who was able to get sponsors for the Daytona 500 because he named Mike Wallace to be the driver. They might or might not stick with him.
197 Cup starts. 497 Busch Series starts. Let's call it that. 115 Truck Series starts. Says he's only got 21 ARCA starts, but I know it's more than that.
All right. So he's close to 900. Either way, that's a heck of a lot of starts, man. That's a heck of a lot of starts at the top levels of stock car racing. Jim France needs to go down there and he needs to tell Elton Sawyer, you done screwed up, AA Ron. Back off. Mike Wallace is in. Because it helps NASCAR. It helps Carl Long. This was a dumb, very, very dumb situation that Elton Sawyer's gotten himself in.
Big time.
And I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it right now. It's just the latest in some dumb situations that Elton Sawyer's gotten himself in.
You think?
There have been so many decisions over the last couple of years that not just us, but we've heard other people say it too, that Elton Sawyer says or makes a decision on, and we just end up sitting there scratching our heads. Who's running the place, NASCAR? Are the inmates running the asylum? And yeah, I use that term very, very pointedly because sometimes it seems like some of the decisions coming out of NASCAR are coming out of an insane asylum. Somebody needs to grab the reins and grab them tightly and do what Big Bill France and Bill France Jr. used to do and run this place with the best interests of the sport in mind, and specifically of this series. And again, I've said this earlier on in this podcast. I do not have a problem with Helio Castroneves being in. But Helio Castroneves was given an avenue to ensure that he could get that start. That guy deserves the same avenue, especially with his resume. His resume in NASCAR at the top three levels matches almost anything that Helio Castroneves could say in IndyCar, say for having 4 wins in the Indy 500. Mike Wallace doesn't have the equivalent of that cornerstone crown jewel win. I get it. But what Mike has that Helio doesn't is wins at Daytona and wins at Talladega. And I'm sorry, a class win in a Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona, it's okay, but it's not quite the same thing, Helio. It's not quite the same thing. Any racer would tell you that. And I think Helio knows it. In fact, I know he does. He doesn't have to be told that. He just innately knows. Going the road course at Daytona is vastly different than the oval. Vastly. Will NASCAR make the right decision here? I don't know. But I've laid the challenge down. I hope they do.
Hopefully.
We'll see whether or not they do. Big show coming up this weekend. We'll have more on this and hopefully an update. Plus, we got a whole lot more news coming up as well. Hope you join us then. 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central Time. The weather, thankfully, should allow us to do not only the radio side, but the YouTube side, CRN Live on YouTube. Hope you check us out there. We'll join you on Saturday, and we will be here next Wednesday doing another edition of Crossed Flags.
You've been listening to Crossed Flags, a racing podcast. For more content like this, subscribe to CRN Live on YouTube, and you'll be set to catch the 2-hour live show every Saturday morning at 9 Eastern, 8 Central.
This has been a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.